video. Today we are going to talk about the 10 best movies of 2023. Alright, I know 2024 is almost completely over, but still I haven't talked about 2023 yet. That was because I was just too busy. We're doing the end of the year lists at the middle of the first month of 2024. Hey, welcome. Are we gonna do something different this year? Normally I have my stick and I always stick to that. No, I'm just gonna stick to it. I'm gonna give you my top 10 and I'm gonna give you 6 honorable mentions. So with that being said, thank you for joining me after 2 months again of being away from YouTube. I'm so great at this job. I love it. Alright, but we're back, so let's get straight into it. But before we get into it, if you think this video is way too fucking long, I mean, I have the attention span of a fucking goldfish, so I understand if it is. This video is also watchable on TikTok in a shorter version of 2 parts being 2 minutes in total. You can also watch that, but I would love it if you stayed with me right here. Thank you very much. Sometimes the world delivers some hidden gems to you, and this time it was for Nimona. Nimona is a movie that I actually did not see until months after its release, and it was part of my I still need to watch this watch party that I did at the end of December and the beginning of this month. And I am so glad I actually watched this. I mean, I saw the good scores for it, but I wasn't completely sold on watching it myself immediately. But when I did, I still didn't feel that way. The first half of this movie, it was pretty good and I loved the animation and I loved the acting and the jokes that were told, but it was pretty okay for me. And I started eating. I was eating the Dutch dish called a kapsalon, and I thought like, hey, maybe this will get it done faster, maybe this will do it, maybe this will make it better. And then the second half of the movie hit me, especially that third act. The third act of this movie was so incredibly mesmerizing, so beautifully animated, so incredibly told that I just forgot I was eating. I had to throw away half of my dish because I was just looking at the screen like, oh my god, that was absolutely perfect. The third act of this movie, it moved me, it made me emotional, it made me feel feelings I hadn't felt in a long time, so it did everything I could have hoped. And that third act alone may be my favorite third act of any movie in 2023. So yeah, take that, Nimona. For number 9, I have another movie that was part of my I still need to watch this watch party, and it's called Bottoms. I have no idea when Bottoms came out, but I mean, I wanted to watch it. It had good scores. And seeing the premise of the movie and what this movie was about, I thought it was weird that the scores would be this high. I felt like the premise of this movie was a premise that would be for a mediocre Disney movie. I didn't know what I could expect, but then I saw the movie and then I saw what it actually was and what it actually was about, and that was freaking genius. The story is so incredibly self-aware and so obnoxiously over the top that I just could not help but love everything that they did. The acting, the set pieces, everything they did, the story beats, the things they did in the end, the killings of everyone. It was so freaking good. And if you want to hold the conversation on feminism these days, this is how you do it. This was great. This was perfect. I have never screamed, "Yeah, women!" as hard as I did in this movie. This was perfect. Whenever this movie got announced, I knew I would love it. And when the scores came in and they were actually phenomenal and not shit, I was genuinely surprised. I thought the scores for this movie would be shit. That is, of course, Winnie the Pooh Blood. No, it's not. It's not that one, of course. It's Saw X. I mean, come on. Wow, this movie, they finally did it right. I mean, I loved Saw from the beginning. I am a huge Saw fan, and the first one especially is one of my favorite horror movies or gore movies gore, torture, porn movies ever made. And I mean, I loved it. But then they started going off the rails with the timeline, and I'm glad they said it themselves, but killing off John Kramer in the third one was just the worst idea they ever could have done, but they made it work. And then this one came out, and the scores were great, and I thought like, why is that? And then I saw the movie, and it tells you exactly why this movie has so great scores. I mean, they finally made the Saw movie about John Kramer and not about the killings. The killings, you always look at him and feel like, oh, it's sad that you are here, but you fucking deserve it, you bitch. And this movie, completely deserved. Everyone who died and everyone who was in one of these torture machines freaking deserved it. And the movie was about John Kramer, and it made you feel about John Kramer. Okay, I can grant it to you, the movie did sympathize a deranged serial killer, but it did it in a good way. So Saw X is on this list, and I freaking loved it. For number 7, hey, I asked you this. I made a poll. Do you want me to include all the movies, especially also the 2022 movies that released in 2023 for me? And you said yes, just include all of them. So that brings us to The Whale, a movie that was on a lot of favorite lists last year, but it's on mine this year. All right, The Whale. I am not the most skinny of a person, but yeah, I felt this movie. I didn't feel it because I'm also as bloated as the man in the movie was, but Jesus Christ, come on. How can you not feel this movie? I heard the scores were a little bit down for it. They're a lot less than I would expect it to be, but it was just phenomenal. Brendan Fraser did it awesomely. He deserved that Oscar. I never cheered someone on as hard as I did for him, and he absolutely crushed it. He's perfect. He's great. The role he portrays is absolutely phenomenal. Sadie Sink, I never thought she was the best actress. I mean, she's good in Stranger Things from what I saw, and I liked what she did in that movie or in that series, but seeing her do this dramatic role just makes me really excited for her future. I mean, the story The Whale tells and the story they have interconnected with each other, apart from just him being very fat and probably dying in this movie, made it perfect, made it great, and that's why I love The Whale. So if you haven't watched it, be in for a great time, but also a very painful one. My point from number 7 still stands with this one, because The Banshees of Inisherin is one of the best movies of 2022 to come out in 2023 for me. It's also one of the first movies I watched in 2023. So this movie, The Banshees of Inisherin, is actually one of the first movies that was on this list. And it stood at number 1 for a long time. And I thought it was gonna take the number 1 spot this year, but then some other movies came out. And this one, well, it fell a little bit lower, but still pretty great. This is also the place where we start the 5-star reviews on Letterboxd, because The Banshees of Inisherin is such an incredible story about two friends who don't like each other anymore, and it's just that. It's nothing more, but it's absolutely perfect. The story is emotional, it's great, it's funny, it's actually everything you want from it. The acting performances were great, the set pieces were great, the inter-story from Barry Keoghan's character was great, even though I don't like Barry Keoghan that much. I very much loved him in this movie. Yeah, this movie sold me, this movie had me. I actually went to see this one a second time, and I didn't plan on it because it was like the secret screening for a movie that had yet to come out. In Belgium it was already out, in the Netherlands it wasn't. And normally when something like that happens, I will probably stand up and go to another movie I haven't seen yet, but not this time. I actually watched it a second time, and I got to watch others experience this movie for a second time, and that experience alone was awesome. On to some honorable mentions. The first one being Pathan. I loved Pathan. Pathan is an Indian movie. Not gonna say which part of India because I genuinely don't know and I don't want to offend anyone. So it's an Indian movie starring Shah Rukh Khan, I think you pronounce it, or SRK. The man, the myth, the legend. I already knew his name before I watched Indian movies, but now this was the first movie I actually watched with him in a leading role. And it delivered. I mean, I heard and I saw the scores for this were pretty mid. Not for me. I loved the experience. I loved sitting in the movie theater. I loved seeing everything blow up. So I loved Pathan. A Man Called Otto is also a movie from last year that I genuinely just stuck to this year because I saw it this year. And I actually quite loved it. I mean, this movie was based upon a Nordic, some Scandinavian countries movie. And I thought like, oh my god, they Americanized it. But then I saw the movie and it actually moved me a lot. So yeah, this movie, it gut punched me. Scream 6, the best of the franchise for some parts. Maybe not the best, maybe the best. It's what you see. The setting in New York was phenomenal. The killings in New York were phenomenal. The movie did very great stuff, going back to the roots of the Scream franchise, but also just holding on to something new. I am not looking forward to Scream 7 because of everything that went on behind the scenes, but hey, we'll see where it goes when that one comes out. I just loved Scream 6. For number 5, I have a movie that I had to watch 3 times to find it as perfect as I find it today. And that is Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. The first time I watched it, I felt like the middle half of the movie was just way too slow until I saw the end of the movie, saw the coming soon bit or to be continued bit, and I thought like, okay, yeah, now I get it. It's just half a movie. And I loved the movie. I loved the ending. I loved every Spider-Verse shit, and I loved everything with Miguel, even though I thought Miguel was maybe a little bit over the top. But still, I very much loved every single bit of it. Then the second viewing was a lot better, mainly because they fixed the audio issues in this movie because that was god awful, and I loved it a bit more, and the spider stuff still was perfect and the middle part didn't feel as long. And then I watched it the third time with my friends and then I was completely sold, like yeah, I watched this 3 times in a week now, so yeah, this is absolutely great. There's actually one other movie that did this for me that I had to see multiple times to see the actual potential and the actual love and admiration I had for it. But this was just it, man. For a sequel, it delivered. For a first-parter, it delivered. If you haven't seen Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, this one is still going to be great. They went all out on the animation. They went all out on the different styles and it worked perfectly. I mean, this movie delivered on many, many, many fronts. And I just bought it on Blu-ray, so I will watch it a lot freaking times more. Number 4 is for a movie that I actually put in my most anticipated list of 2022, I think, but it came out only in 2023, and that was because the release date wasn't that clear. It was an Apple TV Plus movie that they brought to theaters because it was too big and too great, and that is, of course, Killers of the Flower Moon. Every single 3 hours and 26 minutes of it. It was awesome. The movie didn't feel like it was 3.5 hours. I watched The Irishman and I was just so bored during that movie. I appreciated it for what it was, but it was just so bored during it. And this one, not even a single bit. I loved every single second. I loved everything that they did with the story, with the characters, with everything they told. The 3.5 hours are completely earned. There's not 1 minute I would cut off this movie. So yeah, that alone made this movie as perfect as it is for me. I actually have some colleagues at work, I work in the movie theater, that don't like this movie because it's that long, and I just call them blockbuster junkies. It's just that. They're blockbuster junkies. They cannot appreciate true art. Because this movie is not just a movie. It's pure art. Or as Martin Scorsese likes to say it, this movie is cinema. Going into the top 3, I have a movie that is genuinely scary to talk about, so I'm just gonna skip over it. No, I'm just gonna give my opinion on it. It's Sound of Freedom. And I know this movie did a lot in America, and I get why it did a lot in America, and I don't get why it has been silenced so much, but I do get it. Yeah, it's America, so it's probably right why this movie was silenced. And when I saw the story and when I saw the movie, I completely got it. Like, this movie is gonna divide people, and dividing it did. And even us, because we played it in our movie theaters in Belgium, even we got emails saying that we supported anti-Semitism and stuff like that. Like, Jesus Christ, the movie is absolutely not about that. But still, we got comments and hate for that. So it's a worldwide problem. And the story of this movie and everything it told, it touched me. It held me. It held me so dear to my heart, and it was so painful, and I cried my eyes out during this movie, and everything was so painful. And in the end credits, there was a speech from the leading actor, Jim Caviezel, that also got a lot of backlash, the actor, and I don't know exactly why, but I mean, he gave a good speech in the end of this movie. And I'm just considering this movie for what I saw, and the movie itself was great, and it hurt me, it punched me, and I loved it. Sorry. Not sorry. I loved it. My point stands. For my number 2 best movie of the year, I have Past Lives. This movie did so many great things for me. I didn't know what to expect with this one. I just knew there was a lot of buzz going around it, so I knew I had to watch it. So when I saw this movie was playing in a theater 50 kilometers from my home, I thought like, hey, I'm gonna give it a shot. Maybe I will get mesmerized. I was just extremely scared because I was really sleepy that day, and I had such a busy year that I just fell asleep anywhere I could. So if I sat in the movie theater, I would fall asleep. If I watched the movie on my couch, I would definitely fall asleep. So yeah, I was very scared going into this movie because I wanted to give it the thing it wanted. I wanted to give it the attention it needed. And then I watched it, and I couldn't even get myself a second to sleep because it was just so incredibly great. It was phenomenal. The story, it hit like a house. It was perfect. It hit me like a train. It was so incredibly endearing and fun and sweet and cool to watch. It doesn't feel like a movie because it feels like you are there with these persons observing what they are doing. This movie is so incredibly dear, small, and just sweet. And it was on my number 1 for a very long time, and it would have won if I didn't watch the number 1 movie 3 times already. But first, some other honorable mentions, of course, and the one I want to talk about is Oppenheimer. It just barely did not make the top 10. It really deserved a place, so I'm really happy it's still in this list, the honorable mentions list, because this movie was actually great. The story was awesome, the acting was perfect, the directing was awesome. It was maybe just a few minutes too long, and because of that nitpick, it didn't make the top 10. Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 is another movie that also barely made the list. And it's just because, well, I loved the movie and I loved everything about it. It's just too much of a first-parter for me to actually see it as a whole movie that I can watch again and again and again, so that's why I bumped it out of the top 10. It's still a very great movie. They took a lot of balls with it, and it made a good amount of money, but it was just a way too expensive movie, so yeah, that's why it flopped. But hey, this movie, it was awesome, and if you watch it, I can't wait to rewatch it. It had a lot of humor, and I'm very excited for part 8. And the last honorable mention I'm gonna give you was The Holdovers. The Holdovers is sweet, The Holdovers is funny, The Holdovers is cute, The Holdovers is just a fun little movie that you should watch when you can, because I mean, it did not do as much for me as it did for others, but I see why it is that great. The acting is phenomenal, and I hope Paul Giamatti gets an Oscar nomination for this because he was absolutely perfect. He carried the movie. He did it all on his own. Well, the others helped, of course, but he was the heart of the movie. He was everything for this movie. If not for him, this movie would have flopped, and I'm so happy that it didn't because it was just incredibly cute to watch this. But then my number one best movie of 2023 is Godzilla Minus One. I am so happy I watched this movie 3 times already because the first time I also was very tired, and during the middle of this movie I fell asleep. I thought for maybe a second, but it turned out on my second viewing I missed like 15 minutes of it, and I got all the important parts but not the human parts of that first screening. And I still loved it. I gave it 4 or 4.5 stars, but I knew I had to give this movie the rematch it deserved, the other chance it deserved, the plan B it deserved, because I knew this was gonna be great. I saw the scores and I feel like, no, this is the exact movie I want, and this is the exact movie I love. It can't be that I don't love it. So I went to watch it a second time, went to watch every single second of it, and I was blown away. It was absolutely perfect, absolutely phenomenal in every single way of the word. It was awesome, it was good, it was great. And then I went to watch it this third time with a friend, and well, yeah, this movie sold me. I still love every single second. It's one of the best blockbusters of 2023. It's definitely the best Godzilla film of 2023, because you know you make a great Godzilla film when you can take out Godzilla entirely and it's still a perfect film. That's exactly what this one is. Godzilla is not the main thing. Godzilla is just the thing moving the plot forward. And that's awesome because the actual carriers of the movie are the humans. And I never thought that the humans would be the best parts of a Godzilla film. And that's why this movie is a deserved number 1. Alright, what did you guys think of this list? What is your top 10? Please let me know in the comments down below because I'm really excited to hear your opinion on my list, but most importantly, your list. What is your list? What's your top 10 best movies of the year 2023 list? Please let me know in the comments down below. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being back with me. Let's go for a great 2024. And yeah, see you next time with the worst movies of 2023.